Happy day 2 of understanding fear, day 2 of the history of fear, and a special ask. I'll be answering my 3 questions in the comments a little bit later, but I do know there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of unease out there. How could there not be? We don't know how long we're going to be in this. We don't know when we might see the apex. We don't know when we might see the end. So if anything I say resonates with you, think about those that you know that might be asking the questions when, how, and what are we going to do. When I was doing the research for my online course and later my book, when I came across today's part, my mind was completely blown. And the truth through all of history, the 3 social hereditary factors that have had the ability to influence all generations, it's a combination of schools, churches, and the public press. Now, churches seem to be dropping off a lot across our globe. However, churches, government, although we should never combine them, I think the reality is if schools, government, churches, and the public press can all be on the same page, it has the incredible influence to shape a generation in a very short period of time, if not one generation unto itself. And the example that I included in my book, I took it back to 1914, 116 years ago, the day the world erupted, not dissimilar to what we're going through now. World War I broke out, and it was just a complete sense of utter chaos. But World War I didn't start with one decision overnight in 1914. It actually started in 1878. And it was in 1878 that really 2 individuals, at the time the head of the German government and the head of the German education system, got together and imprinted the concept of culture into its youth. It started in kindergarten, it worked its way all the way up through the school system and into university. So that when the early 1910s came around, the German army was so strong and so powerful because they had imprinted upon an entire generation of individuals the concept of being able to be fearless and die for their country. It's something we haven't really seen since, not a bad thing, but it can't help me wonder what would have happened if we had imprinted upon generations the concept of, that fear is here to teach us something. We can be resilient in the face of adversity. And I have my notes behind me, and there's one quote, Benjamin Kidd stated so well in this case way back when. The aim of the state of Germany was everywhere to orient public opinion through the heads of both its spiritual and temporal departments, through the bureaucracy, through the officers of the army, through the state direction of the press, and last of all, through the state direction of the entire trade and industry of the nation. So as being the idealism of the whole people, to a conception of and to a support of the national policy of modern Germany. Now this was back in 1914, and that quote was shortly after that when we really looked at the power that the 3 ideals, education system, the clergy, and the public press were able to imprint upon a society. They controlled the press, they controlled the schools, and they can control the clergy. So therefore, it was no wonder that Germany was able to grow into such a superpower in one generation. But it makes me question, and it makes me wonder, if German soldiers were so willing to face certain death with fearless impunity back then, when one stops to consider the fact that had they been taught from early childhood that this sacrifice was a rare privilege. So I think about my own journey, I think about my son especially. To be here today on a global scale, gripped with uncertainty, gripped with fear, what's happened over the last 30 years? What's happened over the last 60 years that led us to this point? For those individuals that aren't respecting social distancing, what's been imprinted upon them over the last 30 years to not pay any attention to the warnings? Or for those individuals that have been fighting over toilet paper in the grocery stores, what over their lifetime, whether 30, 40, 50 years, what's been imprinted upon them to lead them to this moment? So yesterday we talked about, being able to understand fear either by being in it or being on the outside of it. Today, the question remains, what's happened over the last decade, generation, 2 generations that led us to this moment? And I encouraged you, as I did when I read that, as I really went back to my childhood, and I thought about those elements from my own youth that imprinted various paradigms, various truths, various lies that I came to believe. So the invitation today is, if you've got an element of fear and uncertainty, really take the moment with it. Take the moment and ask, where did this come from? And do I have any truth and any belief in what I'm feeling? And really feel the answer. Until tomorrow, be well, make sure to keep your distance, and wash your hands.